Hi, I'm Ashley Miller Anderson. I am a 2016 School of Nursing graduate, and I am here today interviewing Ms. Flora Ponder. So, Ms. Ponder, let's get started with the first question. How did you become interested in a career in nursing?
I think it started probably many, many years ago when I was a preschooler. My great-great-grandmother kept me while my grandmother and mother worked. And I was always out playing in the yard, taking care of birds and insects and things of that nature. And my great-grandmother said, well, I think you ought to be a registered nurse. So you can imagine how many years ago that was. And didn't think too much about it till later on when I was getting out of high school and your counselor suggests what you want to do. Well, I wanted to be you have to do two different things. I wanted to be an interior decorator, number one. And number two, I put that nursing down because that's what my great-great-grandmother said. So the counselor calls me in a day or two later. She said, honey, I think you better take that other one off and go for nursing. And then I guess on up to 1953, Mayor Broadus was the mayor of Louisville that year, was elected, and it was his idea that he wanted to integrate all schools of higher education. So one of them was to integrate the Louisville General Hospital nursing school. And later on, he did, but he had a fight on his hand because they were not interested in having Afro-Americans in their schools. So consequently, I ended up being one that I was married though, and I had two children.
Before nursing school?
Two little children.
Bless you.
When I first got out of high school, I went 1 year to Holy Cross and did very well. I didn't have a family then. So I had an all-A average that first year, and they knew about that. So they wanted me to be first enrolled into the school to help integrate it. And so I did after my mother-in-law said she'd help with the kids and so forth. So in 1954 is when they finally pulled the school together. The director left. She said she was not going to stay there, and it was a rigmarole in the paper all the end of 1953. And she said that she didn't have any place for blacks to stay in the dormitory. And she said if they did open up the school, she was going to leave, you know. And sure enough, she did. She left. And they pulled a half class together that January 1954. And of course, they had already enrolled me to be the one, you know, to be there and be the stopper or something. And they had two white girls and then myself, and then they brought two other girls that I think they almost knew that they were going to have difficulty because that was the name of the game, you know. So consequently, I entered the Louisville General Hospital Nursing School in 1954. And that's how I kind of got with it. The director retired, but she stayed there. She resigned, excuse me. She stayed there another whole month before she left. But she would meet me in the hall and she wouldn't even speak to me. She would turn her head and walk and look the other way. But that was all right with me because I was too busy.
Sure. You had a lot on your plate.
And she said that no Afro-Americans could sleep in their dorm, you know, with the white girls. So, of course, that was okay, too, because I need to go home and take care of my kids and my husband. The nurse that headed up the educational part of it, she was a retired Army nurse. And she later on got to be a very good friend of mine, although when the four of us entered the classroom, she let them know and everybody else know that she didn't I think she said she didn't like niggers, but she would be fair. So I thought, That's fine.
Fine by me.
Right, that's fine, because I don't have time for you either. But anyway, we started out, and it was a delight. I enjoy nursing. It's a passion of mine, and I do love people.
So what was the education like while you were in nursing school? What all was taught?
The diploma nurses were not getting enough, I guess, education, but they felt that they were kind of being used to run the hospitals, you know. We had, we had maternal and child health, med surgical. We had 1 year of pharmacology and 6 months of drugs and solutions, because at that particular time, it wasn't a lot of drugs. So that year in pharmacology kind of helped you learn most of the drugs that was on the market.
Oh, sure.
And of course the drugs and solution, because we had to mix. You had to mix so many of your drugs that you had to
mix
do.
them yourself.
Yeah.
So we're spoiled now. We just call it
Just
pharmacy and they
turn
send
it
it
over
right
and
on
it's
up.
already right there for you. And most of these classes was followed up by one place to do the practicum in, and that was very interesting to me. Pediatrics, we went to for a month to a daycare that took only foreign children's families and children's families who were deaf mutes. And that was at 3rd and Muhammad Ali, and that was a very interesting journey, you know. But each of these, and one blessed thing that I appreciated, that when we had the pharmacology, we were invited to Eli Lilly in Indianapolis for a full paid, wonderful 2-day trip.
Oh, wow.
And everybody looked forward to that, you know. In OBGYN, we had to have so many deliveries that we had to be in, but that was another thing that was kind of against the diploma program, is that they felt that the students had to work, you know, too many hours, and also get the program too. Our microbiology was taught out at Spalding's. Some of the courses were from UofL instructors, and the others were right there, you know, with the instructors that they had there in the school. But I think those are the main, psychology, public health, were the main ones, that subjects that we had. And sometimes you worked during the day and had to work that night, go to school in the day and work that night on the wards, on the units. But it was interesting. I think the least I liked was medical. I didn't like medical nursing too much. And I think psychiatry was about the one that I liked best.
Favorite. That was mine. I was going to ask.
You like that too?
I did. I liked psychiatric, and then women's health is my specialty area. So I started off on the mother-baby unit, but I also did not like medical surgery.
Right. Dr. Harvey Sloan had already come to Louisville and was trying to set up a program in an underprivileged area. And he had been friends to the Kennedys, and I think had roommate to one of them. They set up 8 health centers throughout the country, and these 8 health centers were to show how to deliver comprehensive health center to poor people with dignity. And that was quite a chore. Well, I had that district when I was at the health department in the beginning. And Dr. Harvey Sloan heard about me and sent for me. And I went to speak with him, and he asked me to come and work down there as director of nurses. So, and every one of he had been here for over a year. The people in Louisville did not want any change. So they did not want any changes of the comprehensive health care to anybody, I don't think. So consequently, in 1968, I went to work at the health department. I mean, went to the Park Duval with Dr. Harvey Sloan. And Dr. Sloan was a very, very wonderful person to work for. As a matter of fact, the program was set up to give service to the poor. The area was from Algonquin over to Main Street, up to 28th Street. Now that's no place at all, you know. But it was 2 housing projects in that area, Southwick and Carter Home. So that was quite a few people. But I don't know. No one wanted it. In other words, they didn't want any change, I would think. So consequently, we set out on it anyway because the Binghams and the Biggs furnished the money. Those 2 families furnished the money to meet the government money, because that's what you had to have. And so we started by them couldn't have a new building. You had to be in an old building. And they joined 2 housing project buildings together. Well, it was very uncomfortable for the nurses. It was 4 nurses at that particular time that started out, and I was the director. And we had to start with a procedure manual. Everything had to be started from scratch. We had all the services that were comprehensive related to OBGYN, pediatrics, adult, we had rehab, social service, every area that you can possibly think of was developed. And we also developed having aides to all of those divisions. Because up to that time, the only aides were nurses' aides. But we had social work aides, we had every aide you could think of. Because that let you hire the people in the community that were without jobs. But as I said, the community board took it very serious. There was no recognition and concern for all that Park Duval offered to this community. And one of the things I can think of is that we had a transportation service to pick up people, but we started the first ambulance service that you see on the street now. Anybody that got sick in the city of Louisville and had to be taken to the General Hospital or any hospital had to be taken in a station wagon in the back with the police driving. So you know that the first care is the one that is most important, you know. Well, after we got them all trained, got the text trained, got the driver, got 2 ambulances built and brought them back to Louisville. Then we had the men that we could invite them to come, and they liked that. But how many accidents you're going to have between 27th Street or 28th Street to the river? So they just sat there. They were bored. So finally, that man that headed up that program at Park Duval, the ambulance and transportation, went down and asked the city if they would please let us put a red phone on the desk to call us if they got overrun. Well, it didn't take long for anybody to see that there was a better way to get to the hospital with a technician and a driver and medication and things and oxygen and so forth right there. So after 6 years, Dr. Sloan left Park Duval and went to run for mayor. And one of the things that he made a promise to them, that he would set up the ambulance service for the city of Louisville if he got to be mayor. Now, you never hear that. But it was so many first of those things that was offered to the city because everybody began to get aids of different, to help them with their services and so forth. Look at your drugstores, you have all kinds of aides, you know, and we started aides in every division. Nurse practitioners in every unit, OBGYN, pediatrics, and adult service. But we had to go to Frankfurt to get it straightened out so that nurse practitioners could work in Kentucky and get paid. Now that was Park Duval.
Thank you.
Are you
I am.
yeah. Oh, good for you. Well, we had to go to Frankfurt and get all kinds of papers and things. But we had these nurses from out of the state that was there working, but we had to get it legalized. So that was Park Duval that got that particular thing straightened out for nurse practitioners. When I left Park Duval, I felt like I'd been to the war on poverty, I'm telling you. So I stayed on, and Dr. Sloan went on to be mayor of Louisville. And to show you how much I love nursing, he wanted me to come with him. But I felt I'd rather have nursing than politics. Park Duval has been underestimated. We had the UofL students used to come. They did the practicum down there, and I would give them their orientation and then distribute them on the different units because there was pediatrics, adult, OBGYN, and all the rest of the services was there. We had a large dental department. And we had dental assistants and dental hygienists that we taught. And it was just a wonderful thing, but it was hard. Eventually, I had a staff of 60 people. I think by the time the UofL students were coming there for the practicum, I had about 60 people on staff, including the RNs and the aides that I had in the division. We had a home health division. That we went out into the homes and took care of the mothers and the babies, but in that district now, because they didn't want us to come outside of 28th Street. So we had a teenage program. The teenagers had their own trailer, and they came after school, and they interacted with each other, and they learned about health care through this particular teenage program that we had. We had a drug program, drug counseling. We had sickle cell. We had lead poisoning program. Just every program we could take out, right.
Wow. Well, I was going to ask you, what of all the things that you were able to accomplish there, what would be, if you had to pick one that you're most proud of, what would you say?
At Park Duval? All of them were great. I think it was the overall delivery and the introduction to poor people that they did have some say in something. And they were the root and the starting of these things. But I think that anyone that goes into nursing I think they need to have to like it. And more than just for the paycheck of it, you know. They set up a program across the country for young people who had been on welfare to get a skill. Now, before, there was all the complaints about people that were on welfare. But what were they going to do? And the system sometimes is kind of against them, because when I first started public health nursing, if a girl became pregnant, she couldn't stay at home, even if she was 14 or 15 years old. She had to get an apartment across somewhere else, and the city paid for it. But the need was for somebody to help that young lady, you know, with her problems at that time. So consequently, I think that getting this group that I had there, they were young women who were good people, but they had never had any image or anybody to practice after. So they set that up to give them a skill. And the reason I say I like that, because I don't go to the grocery hardly a day without meeting up with some of those students, because I taught them social skills, everyday living skills, as well as the courses for them to be medical assistants. The ones I had were for medical assistants, and they are very appreciative. And they've done many things, and they often come back to me. One of your instructors here at UofL in nursing started out in this program, and she became a PhD. And I've had several of them that have gone on to have PhD nursing. And that start for them, who had no one to follow afterwards, I think that's one of the greatest things.
Is there anything you would have done differently in your career as a nurse?
I don't think so. Nursing has been very, very rewarding to me. I love nursing, so it's kind of hard for me to make a pick as to what it is that I really, really like. Let's see, after I left Waterson, I went back to the health department again. At this particular time, I went into the lead poisoning program, childhood lead poisoning. And we, at that time, Jefferson County, Louisville Health Department, was the training area for the country in lead poisoning. So taught many people from all kinds of states, including Hawaii. We used to get people coming from Hawaii to learn about lead poisoning. So I enjoyed that very much. And while I was in the lead poisoning program, CDC came up with another grant for the health department. And it was a grant that was for high-risk mothers and children. And these were mothers who had sexual transmitted diseases, children that had different problems with their health, and also one of the main ones was sickle cell anemia, and made arrangements with the University Hospital that they sent me the names of all of the babies that were born with the sickle cell trait. That was very interesting because most people at that particular time thought that only Afro-Americans had the sickle cell trait. But of course we know that these people that were born near the equator. I worked that program until, I guess about till I retired, really.
So I asked you what your most proud moment was from Park Duval, and I know this is a hard question. If you look back over your entire career, what would be the thing that is most rewarding to you?
Well, I think just the fact that nursing has been so good to me. And I have run into so many, many different facets of it.